Naomi Esparza's fingers were numb, curled against the polished wood of the defendant's table. Her nails, usually neatly trimmed and painted a soft lilac, were bare now, bitten at the edges. The courtroom was colder than she remembered, the light streaming in through high windows casting bars of sunlight across the pale gray floor. Like prison bars, she thought. Appropriate. She had been here before, dozens of times over the past 2 months, but today felt heavier. Final. The murmurs of the audience behind her, the rustle of the judge's robes, the stern, rehearsed voices of the attorneys, they all blurred into background noise, like a film she wasn't really watching. It was supposed to be a normal life. A quiet one. She'd taught literature at Meadow Ridge High for almost a decade, tucked her grief into the pages of the books she assigned her students, and raised her son, Jules, with a gentleness the world didn't often return. She wasn't perfect, but she wasn't this. She wasn't what the prosecution said she was. The people called Devin Harlow to present the opening statement. She looked up for the first time in minutes. Devin Harlow, young, polished, confident, stood from the prosecution's table. He didn't smile as he walked to the center of the room. He didn't need to. He had the advantage, and he knew it. His voice was calm, articulate, but not loud. Your Honor. Members of the jury. This is a case about betrayal of trust. Naomi's lawyer, an overworked public defender named Miriam Keller, sat rigid beside her. She kept glancing sideways at her client, maybe hoping she'd finally decide to speak. But Naomi didn't. She couldn't. Not yet. Devin continued, gesturing to the screen behind him. The evidence will show that Naomi Esparza, a respected teacher, knowingly fabricated claims against a fellow educator. The fallout of her actions cost that man his job, his career, and nearly drove him to take his own life. A quiet gasp from the gallery. Naomi remained still. This isn't about assumptions, Devin said. It's about deliberate lies. A digital paper trail. Deleted messages recovered. Anonymous tips traced back to school computers used by the defendant. Her fingerprints are everywhere. And while the defense may argue trauma or confusion, let's not forget that she waited nearly 2 weeks before reporting anything. Not a victim's timeline. Naomi blinked. A single tear traced down her cheek. She didn't brush it away. She let it fall. Devin turned, facing her directly now. We trust teachers with our children. With shaping our society. With guiding the future. What happens when that trust is shattered? He returned to his seat. His face was unreadable, but Naomi thought, perhaps foolishly, that she saw hesitation in his eyes. Something that didn't belong there. The judge, an older woman named Francine Bell, cleared her throat. Defense, you may respond. Miriam stood, fidgeting with her pen. Your Honor, the defense requests to reserve our opening statement until after the prosecution presents their first witnesses. The judge nodded, and the trial moved forward. Outside the courtroom, the hallway buzzed with reporters, curious bystanders, and the occasional student who had remembered Naomi as someone different. Not the cold, calculating woman the headlines screamed about. Jules stood just beyond the glass doors, arms crossed, his hoodie drawn up even though the sun was high and warm. He refused to look at her. She approached him slowly. You didn't have to come. Yeah, I did, he muttered, not meeting her eyes. Someone has to. She wanted to reach out, wanted to touch his shoulder, brush his dark hair back like when he was small. But she didn't. He was 15 now. Too old for gestures that reminded him of childhood. How's school? She asked quietly. We're literally here because of school, he said. Weird question. Naomi smiled faintly. I suppose so. A silence settled between them. Then, do you want me to testify? She looked down. No, you shouldn't be part of this. I won't let them drag you into it. Too late, Jules said, and then turned away to lean against the glass. They already whisper. Say you had a breakdown. Or a secret lover. Or worse. Naomi felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry. Yeah, he said. Me too. Devin stayed late that evening, combing through emails and evidence again, alone in his office. There were too many coincidences, too many things that seemed just a little too clean. The accused victim, Mr. Layton, had a clean record, but also an unusual number of student complaints that were dismissed over the years. And no one seemed to be asking why. He flipped through Naomi's personnel file again. Glowing reviews. Consistent attendance. Students adored her. She organized poetry clubs, ran book drives, helped with student housing referrals for struggling families. And then, suddenly, a complaint. Vague, damning, and ultimately linked back to her. He opened the folder of character testimonies again. Nothing from family. No letters of support. Except for a single one, Jules. Typed in lowercase letters, barely a paragraph long. My mom is quiet. She doesn't trust people easily. But she wouldn't lie about something like this. I know her. Even if she's not good at explaining herself. He read it twice. Then again. Devin leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He didn't like this. He didn't like any of it. But he was doing his job. And his job wasn't about liking or disliking things. It was about what could be proved. And what could be proved, so far, was damning. Back at her apartment, Naomi stood by the window and watched the city below. She had turned off all the lights, letting only the gold glow of street lamps spill in. She remembered reading The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock to her students just a few weeks before her arrest. They'd laughed at the lines about measuring life in coffee spoons. Now she measured hers in lawyer calls and court appearances. The door opened behind her. Jules walked in, throwing his backpack to the floor. I stayed at Caleb's, he said simply. They fed me. Good, she replied. They're a nice family. They're a real family, he said without venom. Just truth. Naomi winced but said nothing. Do you still write? He asked after a beat. Not lately. Maybe you should. She turned to him. I can't even tell my own story. What's the point in writing someone else's? He shrugged. You told mine. When I couldn't. She looked at him, eyes wide. When Dad died. I didn't talk. Not for a whole year. Remember? I remember, she whispered. You wrote poems. And left them on my bed. One every day. Naomi smiled, watery and soft. You kept those? Every single one. The silence between them wasn't empty this time. It was healing. 2 nights later, the trial resumed. Testimony began. Mr. Layton took the stand, his voice smooth and confident. He painted himself as a man destroyed by lies. He wept. He described his suicide attempt in agonizing detail. And through it all, Naomi sat motionless. Devin watched her. His instinct told him she should react. Break down. Apologize. Fight back. But she just watched. As if she were waiting for something. Or someone. During recess, he found himself near the witness waiting room. He wasn't sure why his feet had taken him there. He paused before the door, then turned away. And walked right into Miriam. Thinking of switching sides, she asked, half joking. Devin looked at her. You really believe she's innocent? I know she is. Then why isn't she saying anything? Miriam exhaled. Because she's scared she'll be believed for the wrong reasons. Because she's a woman. Because she lost everything once already and isn't sure she has anything left to lose. Take your pick. Devon hesitated. What if I asked her questions she'd actually answer? You'd have to stop treating her like she's guilty. He walked away without replying. But he didn't go far. That night, Devon stood outside Naomi's apartment building. He had no reason to be there. It wasn't proper. But he looked up and saw the light in her window, saw the faint silhouette of her pacing the room. And for the first time since this began, he saw not a case file, but a woman trying to hold her world together with trembling hands. He didn't go up. He didn't knock. But he stayed until the light finally went out. Laura Harlow moved through the courthouse with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged there, but still wasn't seen. As an intern for the district attorney's office, she spent most of her time buried in filing cabinets and legal briefs, fetching coffee, listening more than speaking. She was 22, full of theory, and hungry to believe in justice. But something about Naomi Esparza's case didn't feel right. Laura wasn't supposed to be in the records room that day. Technically, she was supposed to be assisting Devon, her older brother, with trial prep. But he had sent her off to organize his inbox, which was code for, "You're not ready for this," and maybe she wasn't. But she was curious. "You're wasting time," she muttered to herself, rifling through case logs. "You're not even on the defense." But she couldn't shake the way her brother looked after Naomi during the last hearing. It was subtle, but not invisible. A pause too long. A gaze too thoughtful. Laura had never seen her brother hesitate. Her fingers stilled on a file. Her eyes narrowed. Complaints against William Layden, 2016 to 2021. She shouldn't. She knew she shouldn't. But her curiosity burned hotter than her fear. Pulling the folder free, she scanned the pages. All of them stamped, "Investigation closed." No action taken. And yet, there were patterns. Vague language, repeated phrases from different students. All female. All citing inappropriate behavior, subtle threats, unwanted touches, never violent, always just ambiguous enough. Laura pressed her lips together. Why didn't anyone look into this harder? She didn't have time to ask more. She stuffed a few copies into her bag, slipped the folder back, and walked out of the records room just as the hallway began to fill with the sounds of the afternoon trial's recess. And that's when she bumped into him. Marcus Lane. He was taller than she expected, broader shouldered, wearing a faded hoodie and a perpetual scowl. Former student. Once expelled. Now sitting quietly in the gallery for every day of Naomi's trial. "Sorry," she said, stepping back. "Wasn't watching where I was." "You're Devon's sister," he said bluntly. She blinked. "You know who I am. You sit with him sometimes." "I remember your face." His voice was steady, his gaze unreadable. Laura narrowed her eyes. "Why do you come here every day?" He didn't answer immediately. Just looked past her, toward the courtroom doors. "Because someone should." That stopped her. "You knew her." "Naomi. She was the only adult who didn't look at me like I was already ruined." His voice tightened. "She gave me books. Real ones. Told me I wasn't just what the system made me out to be." Laura hesitated. "Why were you expelled?" He looked at her then. Really looked. "Because I hit back." She nodded slowly. "They don't usually tell that part." "No, they don't." A long silence. Then Marcus leaned in slightly, voice low. "She didn't do it, you know." "You seem sure." "I am." Laura frowned. "Then why aren't you testifying?" His jaw clenched. "Because nobody would believe me. And if they dragged up my past, it might only hurt her case." Lara's mind spun. "But if you had something, real. Something they couldn't ignore." "Do you?" he asked. She didn't answer. Just clutched her bag tighter and said, "Maybe." That evening, Devon stood in his office with the windows open. City sounds drifted up from the streets below, horns, laughter, a saxophone from someone's fire escape. But the inside of the room was too quiet. His phone buzzed. A message from Laura. Meet me at the coffee place by the courthouse. 15 minutes. Don't be late. No emoji. All business. He sighed and grabbed his coat. When he arrived, Laura was already seated, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of black coffee. She slid a folder toward him without a word. He opened it. Paused. Read. His pulse quickened. You stole this? He asked, his voice low. Borrowed. Laura. Devon, you're the one always saying the law should protect the innocent, not just punish the guilty. So tell me, does this look like the history of a man who deserves the benefit of the doubt? Devon ran a hand through his hair. This should have come up in discovery. It didn't. He stared down at the pages. Complaints. Testimonies. All swept under the rug. All unconnected. Until now. This isn't admissible. Not all of it, anyway. But it's real, she said. You feel it, don't you? He didn't respond. Not directly. But his silence spoke volumes. Laura softened. You don't want to win this one, do you? Devon looked up. I don't want to destroy someone who might be innocent. Laura leaned forward. Then don't. Meanwhile, Marcus walked home through the dim, flickering streets of the east side. His apartment was small, barely more than a room with peeling paint and a leaky faucet, but it was his. He locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and pulled a shoebox out from under it. Inside were letters. One in particular, still in its envelope. The handwriting delicate, unmistakable. Dear Marcus. I hope you read this. I know the world's been cruel to you, but that doesn't mean you have to be cruel to yourself. You have a mind built for stories. Don't let the ending they gave you be the one you keep. MS Esparza. Marcus exhaled. Folded the letter. Then stood. Time to stop hiding, he whispered. The next day, just before trial resumed, Marcus approached Miriam outside the courtroom. She looked surprised to see him. Marcus Lane. He nodded. I want to testify. They'll try to tear you apart on the stand. Let them. She studied his face. There was no bravado, no posturing. Just resolve. Why now? Because someone finally asked. Inside, Devon took his seat slowly. His hands were trembling, just slightly. He looked across the room at Naomi. She met his eyes. And for the first time, he didn't see a defendant. He saw a woman still standing, despite everything. Raina Voss had long since mastered the art of being invisible. As the assistant to Judge Francine Bell, she lived in the shadowed spaces of the courthouse, the quiet halls between rulings, the creaking stacks of records, the folders no one touched for months. And she liked it that way. She listened. She learned. She kept to herself. But this trial, Naomi Esparza's trial, was breaking all her rules. She had worked with Judge Bell for nearly 6 years. Bell was known for her firm demeanor and unshakable neutrality. But Raina had begun to notice small things. The nervous tapping of the judge's pen when Naomi's defense spoke. The rapid whispering with court officers before certain exhibits were presented. The inexplicable omission of a pre-approved witness list during day 3 of the hearing. And today, the clincher. She overheard Bell on the phone before court resumed. Yes, I know what's at stake. If that boy testifies, we may lose control of the narrative. Raina stood frozen just outside the partially open chamber door. That boy, Marcus. Raina's throat tightened. She backed away and returned to her desk with her mind reeling. They're not just letting this happen, they're shaping it. And that's when she did something she'd never done before. She texted a journalist. Unknown number. Hi. I know who you are. I need to talk. No names. Meet me tonight. Bring your ethics. Leave the camera. Soren Darwin had gotten too good at disappointing people. He wrote stories no one wanted to print. He exposed truths readers weren't ready for. And he never, ever backed down, until they stopped giving him assignments altogether. So now, most of his work lived online. A personal blog. A Substack with a small but loyal following. And stories that were too raw, too uncomfortable for polite society. He read Raina's message twice, then smiled. Soren. I'll be there. 9 p.m. Send the spot. She did. A quiet rooftop parking lot 2 blocks from the courthouse. When he arrived, she was already waiting, her frame shrouded in a navy coat, arms folded against the wind. The sky above was bruised purple, clouds heavy with rain. Was? He asked. Don't use my name. He nodded. Understood. You want something that matters? She asked, stepping forward. This trial isn't about guilt. It's about leverage. Soren raised a brow. Go on. The prosecution's witness, the supposed victim, William Layton, has ties to the district superintendent. His brother-in-law, apparently. And the judge? She's been pressured before to dismiss complaints involving school staff. I have the records. Can you prove that? I can't, she said. But you can. I know where to look. Soren studied her. There was no fanfare in her voice, no self-righteousness. Just quiet conviction. And why me? Because you're the only one who won't twist it for clicks. He offered a crooked smile. Flattery and whistleblowing in the same breath. You're dangerous. Raina almost smiled. I prefer necessary. They stood in silence for a moment. If this goes public, he said, you know they'll come after you. They already do, she said. But someone needs to do right by Naomi. Soren nodded. Send me what you have. I'll start digging tonight. Before she could leave, he added, why her? Raina turned to him, her eyes distant. She saved my niece's life once. No press, no reward. Just an old notebook filled with poems left in a locker. It kept my niece from stepping off a rooftop. Soren swallowed. That kind of woman doesn't destroy people, Raina said. She saves them. Naomi didn't expect Marcus to testify. Not really. She'd heard whispers, seen his figure in the gallery some days. But she had never dared to hope. When he stepped forward, the courtroom tensed. Some jurors whispered. Judge Bell adjusted her glasses, displeased. Mr. Lane, Miriam said gently. You were a former student of Ms. Vesparza, correct? Yes. What kind of teacher was she? She was the only one who treated me like I was worth saving. His voice was rough but steady. Everyone else looked at my record and gave up. She didn't. Did she ever act inappropriately toward you? Or toward any student, to your knowledge? Never, he said firmly. She kept distance. She set boundaries. But she saw us. Saw me. Miriam stepped back. Your witness. Devon stood slowly. This wasn't the path he'd planned, but plans didn't matter anymore. Not when the truth kept changing shape. Mr. Lane, you have a juvenile record, don't you? Marcus didn't blink. Yes. And a history of aggression. When I was 14, I hit a kid who was touching a girl against her will in the hallway. The teacher on duty was Layton. A stir in the gallery. Devon looked up. And what did Layton do? He told me I should have let it go. Then wrote me up for assault. Devon paused. You believe Ms. Esparza is being framed? I don't just believe it. I know it. You all don't want to listen because you're looking at credentials, not character. Devon looked at him for a long time. Then said softly, "Thank you, Mr. Lane." As Marcus walked back, he glanced once toward Naomi. She mouthed, "Thank you." And he gave a small nod before exiting the courtroom entirely. That night, Reina's intel began surfacing. Soren's article dropped at 2 a.m. By sunrise, it had already gone viral across education forums and legal blogs. The real lesson: how power and silence shaped the case of Naomi Esparza. By Soren Darwin. Devon read it over coffee he couldn't taste. The names. The dates. The ignored complaints. It was damning. It was honest. And it confirmed every suspicion he'd quietly been trying to suppress. Across the table, Lara watched him. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Devon didn't answer. But he was already opening his briefcase. Meanwhile, Naomi sat by her window, the paper in her hands trembling. She had printed the article after Jules showed it to her on his phone. A quote from Marcus was bolded near the middle. "She gave me something no one else did, hope. That's not something you fake." Her heart cracked open slowly. Not from grief this time. From gratitude. Then the knock came. She opened the door and found Devon standing there. No words at first. Just the shared knowledge that everything had shifted. "I shouldn't be here," he said. "It's a conflict of interest." "You're already here," she replied. His mouth quirked, but his eyes were serious. "I need to know the full truth. From you. Not the evidence. Not the statements. You." "Why now?" she asked. "Because I've spent my whole life chasing justice," he said. "And I think I finally found it. In a woman who never stopped trying to protect everyone but herself." For the first time, Naomi smiled. Small. Quiet. Real. She stepped aside. Jules Esparza had always been quiet. Even as a toddler, he preferred books to blocks, shadows to spotlights. He was the kind of kid who read The Little Prince 3 times in a row and asked questions his mother didn't always know how to answer. Why do people lie when they say they're fine? How come grown-ups forget what flying felt like? Naomi never had all the answers. But she gave him honesty. And stories. And when his father died, just before his 7th birthday, she gave him space to grieve, and then slowly, gently, her hand to hold through the dark. But now Jules had to do something he'd never done before. He had to speak. In front of strangers. In front of Devon. In front of the judge who'd barely looked at him the day he sat in the back of the courtroom, clutching his backpack like a shield. He wore a black sweater that didn't quite fit, sleeves pushed up. His red sneakers were slightly scuffed, and he hadn't combed his hair like Naomi asked him to. He didn't care. His voice, when he took the stand, was softer than anyone expected. But it carried. "State your name," Miriam said gently. "Jules Esparza." "How old are you, Jules?" 15. "Do you understand why you're here today?" He looked past her. Toward the jury. To tell the truth. A murmur stirred in the gallery. Naomi, seated just a few feet away, gripped the edge of her chair. Devon, across the courtroom, leaned forward slightly. Miriam smiled. "Tell us what you know." He hesitated. Then. "My mom didn't lie." His voice trembled, but his eyes did not. "She didn't fake anything. She didn't try to ruin anyone. She tried to protect someone. She didn't want me to know the details, but I heard her crying. Every night. 4 weeks. How do you know she didn't make the complaint for personal reasons?" "Because she didn't file it first." That startled even Miriam. "What do you mean?" she asked. The first complaint wasn't hers. It came from someone else. A student. My mom tried to protect her. She told the principal quietly. They said they'd handle it. Weeks went by. Nothing happened. And then the girl disappeared from school. What girl? Miriam asked softly. I don't know her name, Jules said. But I saw her once, in my mom's classroom. She was crying. She called Mr. Layton disgusting, and then she stopped showing up. Miriam turned to the judge. Your Honor, we'd like to request a continuance to locate the student witness. Judge Bell looked tense. We'll discuss it after cross-examination. She nodded to Devon. Your witness. He stood slowly. No notes. No theatrics. Jules, he began. Do you love your mother? Jules blinked. Yes. Do you believe she's capable of doing something wrong? A pause. Then. Yes. A ripple of shock in the courtroom. Even Naomi leaned back slightly. Can you explain? My mom's not perfect, Jules said. She shuts down when she's scared. She tries to fix everything herself. Sometimes that makes her reckless. He looked at Devon with something like understanding. But she would never hurt someone on purpose. Especially not a student. Devon stepped closer to the jury box. You understand the consequences of lying under oath, don't you? Jules nodded. Yes. And you're not lying to protect her. He hesitated. I'm not lying. But, I am protecting her. Devon raised a brow. How so? I'm telling the truth. And I think that's the only thing that ever really protects someone. Devon's throat tightened. He turned away, suddenly unable to keep eye contact. No further questions, he said. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again. Jules and Naomi walked together, slowly, neither of them speaking for a long time. But as they reached the car, Naomi paused. You didn't have to do that. Yes, Jules said. I did. They'll tear you apart online. They already do, he replied, echoing Raina's words from nights ago. Naomi looked at him, saw the man he was becoming, his father's quiet strength, her own cautious heart. I'm proud of you, she said. He shrugged. Yeah, well. You raised me. Devon found himself outside Soren Darwin's apartment later that night. He hadn't planned to go. Hadn't even texted first. But something inside him, something old and restless, needed to speak to someone who didn't have a stake in the verdict. Soren let him in, no questions asked. He was drinking cheap coffee and working on a follow-up piece. Raina's sources had come through. It was about to blow wide open. You okay? Soren asked. Devon sat on the edge of the couch. I don't know. Soren nodded like he understood. Falling for her? Devon didn't respond. It happens, Soren said. Truth gets under your skin, and so do the people who carry it. Devon exhaled. I thought I knew how to do this. How to separate facts from feelings. You don't, Soren said, not unkindly. That's what makes you human. Raina watched the news unfold quietly. Judge Bell was now under review. Superintendent Stone was facing mounting calls for resignation. William Layton had withdrawn from public life. And Naomi? Her charges weren't dropped yet. But the tide had shifted. Justice, long asleep, was beginning to stir. And so was something else. Raina didn't mean to see Soren again. But he called. Said he was writing the final piece. Wanted her help with tone. They met at a tiny diner on 6th. You ever think about what comes after? He asked her as they shared a plate of cold fries. After what? After this. After truth. What happens when we stop fighting for others? Raina smiled, almost sadly. Maybe we start fighting for ourselves. Soren looked at her like he wanted to say something more. But didn't. Not yet. The next morning, Naomi opened her front door to find Devon standing there. Again. He held a small envelope in his hand. "The judge is stepping down from the case," he said. "The charges aren't gone. But we have a path now." Naomi nodded, heart pounding. He didn't leave right away. Instead, he said softly, "I don't want this to end here." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, after this is done. If you wanted someone to read poetry with again. Or just sit in silence without judgment. I'd like to be that person." Naomi stared at him, heart in her throat. Then, slowly, she stepped forward. And took his hand.